Please help me welcome our speaker, Niels Floor. Niels is the learning experience design pioneer at Shapers, and we are very happy to have him here. Niels, the session is all yours.
All right, thank you so much, Casey. Um, well, it's great to see people from so many different countries, cities, Americans, Canadians. In Switzerland, I see Ukraine, unless Luzern is, there's another Luzern somewhere else, but great to see you all. Yeah, let me get started. So I'll introduce myself a bit more in a moment in my presentation. I'll start this. Perfect. Yeah, and I saw someone from Utah, and ELB Learning is located in Utah, the headquarters. And I was there a year ago, just about, and that's what got the ball rolling. So I'm really happy to be part of this, to be sharing some of my expertise about learning experience design with all of you. Right. So who am I? Niels Floor, a guy from the Netherlands, and as Casey just said. I work, I have my own company called Shapers, and what we do is we design learning experiences, which makes sense. But for me, it's really important to apply learning experience design for clients. So some people have called me a thought leader on learning experience design, which is an honor. But also, I don't just want to be a thought leader. I want to really apply it, to be in the trenches, to lead by example. And that's why I love to design learning experiences for clients from small businesses to multinationals, and anything from primary education to universities. So yeah, that's a lot of fun, and that's where I kind of hone my design skills. And that's what I've been doing for a long time already. So I don't do this alone. This is a picture of some of my team members, and to give an impression of the place that we work at. So besides applying learning experience design, I also train people in learning experience design. And the reason, the kind of how that gets started, was that I created the learning experience canvas. And you may be familiar with it or not, but that's a tool that's being used around the world by learning experience designers and other learning and design professionals. And it's really something that got people excited, and they wanted to get training in that. So that's how I got into training as well. So just went on a trip to Canada. I saw someone from Calgary. This was in Quebec City, where I did a masterclass learning experience design just recently, and yeah, I had a blast there. My first bilingual, besides if you count Dutch and English, but my first French English masterclass, which was for me also very educational. So yeah, training is really important. Also teaching. I teach at Tulane University. I teach a course on learning experience design there, which just makes sense. But besides teaching and training learning experience design and applying it, I'm also kind of on a mission to spread learning experience design around the world, which is one of the reasons I'm doing this talk here. And so there's different things that my team and I do, and one of those is our annual conference, LXD Con. This was in 2019 in Amsterdam, our last physical conference, and since then, due to COVID and everything, we went online, which also has its advantages, because we can cater to a larger public and audience. And so there's literally people from all over the world, just like today. I also see Nairobi, which is also incredible. So and Bangladesh. So that's really great to see how far these ideas are reaching. So we got an LXDCon coming up, LXDCon 25, and I'll have a small present for you at the end. So do stick around. So that's what I do. Now, how all of this got started was that I am, my background is in design. I am, first I studied graphic design, then I studied interaction design. And many years ago, I got into education almost by accident. I got asked to do some work at a university, and I saw an interesting overlap between what I can do as a designer and what's possible within education. So my idea was that if we learn from what we experience, which is a very sensible thing to assume, why don't we design the experiences people learn from? And that will be called learning experience design. Now, this idea came to me back in 2007, and I was really excited. And I was like, let's see who else is doing this. So I asked Google. I just entered learning experience design, and there were zero results. It simply didn't exist. So I had my work cut out. I started learningexperiencedesign.com to share some information. I started writing a book and all sorts of things. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for many years now. And seeing all of you here kind of underlines the fact that I'm on the right path. So really happy about that. Now, I just mentioned a book. My book came out just 2 years ago, available worldwide. Bit of sales here, plugging my gear. So the book, This is Learning Experience Design, published by Pearson New Writers, and it's a kind of a culmination of almost 15 years of work put into this book, and it's really written to be used. It's something that you can use as you design a learning experience. You can find out more at lxdbook.com if you like. I have a question for you to get to know you a bit better. What was the best thing that happened to you today? Now, we're in different time zones, so all of my US friends and Canadian friends only at this morning, but if you're in Bangladesh, it's already evening, just like in the Netherlands or in Switzerland or in Ukraine. So what was the best thing that happened to you today? Please put it in the chat, see what people have been up to. I'll give you a moment to do that. Ah, the sunny blue skies. That's great. Woke up to the sun shining and the birds singing. Oh, that sounds incredible. Taking a walk. It's a warm day. Sunset with my son. Ah, incredible. Riding the ferry to work on a beautiful day. Beautiful rain. So there's rain, there's sunshine, so the weather is definitely important. One day closer to vacation. Watching the sunrise on my drive into work. Woke up breathing. Otherwise it's hard waking up. Hang out with my mother. Love that, Sophia. Rainy day with warm tea in India. Ah, sounds delicious. Some nice tea. It's raining outside, being cozy inside. It's a beautiful day in Toronto. It rained heavily after a scorching hot day. Okay, so that can really be refreshing. Wow. Dropped off boxes to Goodwill. Ah, that's also amazing. Well, you can already see just in one day how many great experiences people have. So that's just, I love that. It's great to see the diversity. There's some overlap there in terms of whether that people enjoy spending time with family members. But we all kind of understand how important our experiences are. And I would love to share an experience with you. And that's why we're going to travel to Italy. Now, I went to Italy a number of times. It's not that far from here, so it's really a great destination. I was there quite a few years ago, and I went to Florence, which is an incredible city. And if you've ever been there, you will know why it's such a wonderful city. And I would advise anyone, if you have the chance, to go there. It's incredible. Now, I am, as I said, a designer, and art plays a really important part in my work. For me, design is an applied form of art. You can imagine how graphic design is an applied form of visual art, but it's really kind of a similar creative process that I use as an artist to create something unique and different when it comes to designing learning experiences. But I was so I was really excited about seeing all these different artworks at the different galleries, museums. So I went to the famous Uffizi Museum, and I knew some of the work that I would see there, some of the Renaissance work from Italian masters, also some Rembrandt paintings, and so I was really excited. But there was one painting that I wasn't really looking forward to, and it's a really famous painting, and I'm sure most of you will know it. If you don't worry. But it's The Birth of Venus by Sandro Botticelli. And this is an early Renaissance painting. And I had seen this painting everywhere up until then. You know, it's I had studied it for art history because I went to art school. I had to know which year it was from, which I forgot, by the way, from the 1400s. But really, I had seen it so many times in books, on posters, on lunch boxes, everywhere, basically. So the image really kind of, it was just something that didn't really speak to me. So when I walked into the room where this painting is on display, my jaw dropped. I was just blown away by the incredible beauty of this painting. I was just mesmerized. So how is that possible? I had seen this image hundreds of times, never really liked it, and when I saw it for real, I was like, this is one of the best paintings I have ever seen, without a doubt. Now, of course, there is a big difference between seeing a picture in a book or on a poster and seeing the actual painting. And not only that, it's also about being in the city where it was created, being in the country, in the city where all of this was happening. And that was such an incredible experience where you could feel, you could breathe in the history of that place. And you knew that this painting was painted not too far away from here. And also, one of the things that also really mattered was the size of the painting. It's really big. Now, why was it so big? When it was created, it was one of the first paintings created on canvas. So it was quite innovative. So Botticelli thought, I want to really impress people and create something magnificent. I need a larger scale, and wood panels have limited sizes. So when when he saw the opportunity to create use a canvas, which you can make much larger, he thought, let's do that. He understood what to do to kind of immerse the audience, and besides also that there's like a really beautiful, almost graphic quality when it comes to the lines that are being used, like a graphic designer almost. It looks really modern even after all these years. So the difference for me when seeing this painting was all in the experience of being there in the moment, seeing the real painting, all the history. It was just a night and day difference. So when we talk about learning experience design, we want to start by defining experience. You've just shared some really nice experiences and very different experiences. So there's already a clue that experience is a very broad term. And it's really important to define experience in a very broad way. And I'll explain in a moment why that is so important. So when I talk about experience, I talk about any situation that you encounter that takes a certain amount of time and leaves some kind of impression. That's basically anything that happens to you while you are awake. Now, obviously, some experiences are very memorable and some are easy to forget. But they are all experiences. Often when people think about what's an experience, they think about something spectacular. They think about going to like an amusement park or traveling the world or whatever, things that are out of the ordinary. But ordinary experiences are just as much an experience as the extraordinary ones. So an experience is really the kind of the vehicle that we use as designers, learning experience designers, to create something for the learner. The experience is what you design. So you are not necessarily designing uh, you're not focusing on just on the materials you're using, like or the teaching aids or the like e-learning module or training that you are setting up. You are thinking about the complete experience, everything that comes into play. Someone's going to enter the experience, they're going to leave the experience, and everything that happens in between is designed to some extent. So that's an important difference when we talk about experience. Now, why is it so important to define experience in a broad way? That's because when we talk about experience and when we talk about learning experiences, we have a lot of preconceived notions about what does that look like. Do you think about the classroom? Do you think about the training space? Do you think about digital forms of learning? And I want to have total creative freedom when it comes to designing learning experiences. And by defining experience really broadly, you have unlimited options. We just saw many different experiences that that you had that were really valuable already today. So if anything can be an experience, anything can be a learning experience, and you have all these options to choose from, and it really gives you the creative freedom to do something unique and different, cater to the needs of your specific learners in their specific circumstances. So experience is what it's all about, and what we do is we design these experiences. Now the word design, as I said, for me it's an applied form of art. That means that you're in a creative process, you're trying to do something, create something that hasn't been done before, and you use your creativity to do something that's really tailored to the specifics of the situation you're dealing with. So it's not just any design, it's really designed with people in mind and their goals in mind. So when you design an experience, that it's aimed to learn from. Now the word learning here is important. There's also discussion about whether you should call it learner experience design or learning experience design. If you, I can answer it later if you like, but learning experience design is about the experience, what you learn from it, and how it impacts the learner and the people in that experience. So it's not an educational experience design or instructional experience design. It's really about the experience and the learning that takes place and the people that matter most, the learners that have the experience. So that's why it's an important term. So kind of explains itself. You design experiences people learn from. But that's not the whole story. With my work, I want to build a bridge from the world of design to the world of learning. As I said, I'm an outsider. I come from the field of design. I've worked in education, but straight away I found out that I have kind of different views on how to shape the way we learn when I compare them to my colleagues that really come from education, for example. And that's logical because I have a very different background, different skill set, and different approach. So what I want to do is to bring those design qualities into the field of learning and to bring some of those learning qualities. There's a lot of insight now into how people learn and all the things you can use to design better learning experiences, and also bring them to the world of design and meet in the middle. Now you can imagine where you come from will determine kind of your path to learning experience design. It's very different for a user experience designer to come into learning experience design, which than for an instructional designer, for example, or a teacher. So that's an interesting journey. So that bridge is what I'm aiming for. And when people come together, designers, L&D professionals, teachers, all of them, that's where magical things happen. All right, so experience has certain qualities. It's a human experience and it has a certain goal. Now, when I talk about human experience, I want to focus on three things. First of all, human experience means that it's that people have emotion, and emotion plays a huge part in how we experience the world around us, what we experience, how it kind of colors our experience. And often in learning, emotion is not really taken into account, where it's more like a systematic methodical approach where you think about objectives and how to reach them, regardless of how someone is feeling. But how someone is feeling is really going to influence your emotions. So that's why designing for emotion in learning experience design is really important. Second is that we are people, and we are not just a set of brains. And there's this idea of like a teacher, a student is an empty vessel that the teacher can kind of fill up with knowledge. I don't see it that way. We have heads, we have hands, we have hearts. You need a more holistic approach if you really want to design for people, students, learners as people. So that's the second thing that's really important. And the third thing is that we are social beings. So designing for social interaction, having people learn from and with each other, coming together, whether it's online or in person, thinking about how those people are going to be interacting is also very important. Now, when you put all of that together, you and you want to apply that, you need an approach that's called human-centered design. So having that human side of learning, human-centered design helps you to put the learner at the center of your design and also at the center of your design process, involving them in the different steps, having them, in, doing your design research, getting to know them, empathizing with them, but also having them test your designs, having them co-create with you, all sorts of ways to involve them in the process so that the experience is also, it also revolves around them and they are the star of the show, really. So human-centered design is really important. Now, on the goal side, you are designing with goals in mind. Now, I just touched upon learning objectives, and those are important. And we can also have discussions about what type of learning objectives there are. I use 4 of them: insight, knowledge, skill, and behavior. But besides that, there's a concept called goal-oriented design, which comes from interaction design. And the idea is that when you think about goals that people have, it's not just about, in this case, learning objectives. It's also about bigger goals they have, goals they may have when it comes to their career, goals when it comes to their private life, things that they want to do to achieve as professionals or as just as human beings. So thinking about the broader scope of goals that people are focusing on, that they are aiming for, helps you to put those learning objectives into perspective and to formulate them in a way that it helps the learner to reach bigger goals besides just a list of objectives that you have for a specific learning experience. So thinking about the broader scope of goals of learners is also important. So that's why goal-oriented design is a very powerful concept. Okay, so putting all of that together, you end up with this definition that learning experience design is a process of creating learning experiences that enable the learner to achieve the desired learning outcome in a human-centered and goal-oriented way. Now, really quickly, some things to highlight. Process of creating, I just refer to the creative process that is similar to how artists works, where you have creative freedom to create something unique and different and special. That's really important to the quality of the experience that you can design. Talk about enabling the learner. So it's not just about telling the learner what to do. It's really about creating the right circumstances, offering them the right experience to get the most out of what they want. And then there's someone missing: human-centered and goal-oriented, I just touched upon. So there's a lot underneath this definition that we can look into at some other point in time, but it's it's nice to understand that there's some deeper layers behind this. All right, so when you look at these words, then you see that there are 4 quadrants, and to get a better idea of what these quadrants mean, you can put it, oh wait, I got one step in between. Sorry, I just kind of messed up. Sorry. So first, when you look at those quadrants, what you have to design for a learning experience is the process and the things that are happening in that process, the activities that take place. That's the more human side of design. The more the more goal-oriented side of design is more product-oriented. What kind of tools or media or methods are you going to use for them to get through that process? Are they going to use an app? Are they going to use a board game? Are they going to use instructions? Whatever. So process and product are important. On the learning side, there's the human side, which is the more theoretical part of how people learn, which is important to know if you want to design a learning experience. But also you want to know how this is put into practice. What does learning look like in real life? If I design something for a school, for a company, for people at home, you need to understand how it can be implemented practically so it works well. Now you can imagine all of these need to be included. If the process isn't right, you won't get to the right destination. If the product isn't working well, people get frustrated and it messes up the whole experience. If the theory isn't right, so the theoretical foundation for your design isn't right, it can still work, but you won't know why. And that's really a shame, because you want to understand and kind of have the proof of concept there and say, well, it works because I understand, I've used this learning strategy, for example. And if it's not practical, it cannot be implemented. So having all of those covered is important. But doing that well can be quite a challenge, because there are a lot of different products you can design. Designing a process and activities is kind of a field in itself. So there are a lot of fields that have influenced learning experience design that have kind of come together. On the design side, which is kind of the foundation, which is how the design process works, which is kind of the overall approach that you use. You have the human focused side of design with interaction design and user experience design. You have the more goal-oriented side of design, like game design, which is really great at designing to get to the next level and certain goals like that. On the learning side, there's the theoretical stuff, the psychology, the neuroscience, and also experiential learning, which is not just about learning by doing. It's really about, it's a science of how we learn from what we experience. Also, the practical side of learning, you have this is where learning takes place. So you have instructional design, you have teaching, training, and that's where you take the theory of learning and put it into practice. So you support people in the right way, you support your students. Now you can imagine it's quite a task to cover all these different fields. So I'm not saying that all of you should be able to do all of that. But what I am saying is that you should at least have some affinity with those fields if you want to be successful at learning experience design, and involve other people who are specialists in those areas. I took the time and to kind of get into all of these fields, yeah, it's a lot of work, but that really helped me to get the overview and to become a complete learning experience designer. So look into these fields, see what you are already good at, and try to add some elements, even if it's just by inviting someone into your team. Now, I want to watch a short video, and some of you may know it, some of you may not, but it's an interesting video. And after the video, we'll have a quick conclusion about this. So here we go.
The test is very simple. When on the street, we asked people who were passing by to name a country on a map. That's it. We had a map. We said, name a country, any country. And here's how that went.
Can you name any country on this map?
Honestly, my geography is so horrible. I can't name anything. Like
Try
nothing.
naming something.
Is this South Africa?
Nope.
Yeah, the country of Asia.
Nope. That's a continent, and
Oh,
that's
whoops.
Russia.
Oh, damn. I'm silly.
That's okay.
Man, it's been a while since I've been in school.
That's okay. Any country on the map.
Africa.
That's a continent.
Country. Damn it.
How about a country in Africa?
I know South Africa's over here somewhere.
No, it's south.
down here, yeah.
Yeah, it's south.
Oops.
Can you name any country on this map?
Yeah. Africa?
That's a continent.
Oh, God.
Can you name any countries in Africa?
God, no. Who knows stuff like that?
Can you name any country on this map?
Yes. Africa.
That's a continent.
Oh, country.
Greenland or Iceland or something?
That's Alaska. Any country.
None at all.
And on the entire map.
This is so horrible.
Where's America?
I would say this big one, but I'm probably wrong.
You're definitely wrong.
Okay.
Can you name any country on this map?
Oh my gosh. Shouldn't I be taught this in school?
I would hope so.
South America?
That's a continent.
Oh my god.
How about a country in South America?
Yeah. Honduras is here, somewhere here.
Can you name any country in Europe?
Is this one Europe?
No.
This one?
No. Can you name a single country in Africa?
Was this Africa?
No, again, that's South America.
No idea.
Can you name a country in South America?
Okay, this is South America.
Yes, can you name a country in it?
No, I can't.
Did you go to high school?
Yes.
Did you go to college?
Yeah, that's a sad part.
Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Mexico, United States, Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea.
All right, so can you name a country on the map? Kid with a save at the end. Yeah, so I just want to really clarify that this is not intended to make fun of Americans. I have a lot of American friends and people right here. You can make this video in any country. I am quite sure similar videos have been made in the Netherlands and we don't do much better. But what can we learn from this video? Quickly, just put in the chat, what can you learn from watching this video? And let's see what people come up with. Use it or lose it. Yeah, that's a great one. Absolutely. We forgot what we learned in high school. Yeah, and before that in primary school as well. Intake is not retention. Oh, that must be a learning professional there, Felicia. Education and knowledge is relative. Geography wasn't taught interactively. Okay, that's possible. A lack of global awareness. The kid learned geography recently. Yeah, probably. Perhaps learning didn't take place originally. Yeah, Americans do not travel. Well, that could be a reason. They do travel, but they probably don't go outside of the US that much, which I can understand. There's a lot to do there. The map was presented differently. Yeah, that's right. But I mean, I'm sure most of you will be able to at least point out where you live. You forget what wasn't memorable. Yeah, so flipping the map is a bit weird, but still it's the same Earth. If you look at the globe. Learning process is ineffective in schools. It's never been important enough for them to learn it. Yeah, so as you can see, there are a lot of things you can learn from this. One of the things you can learn from this is that if you want to make a funny video, you just need to cut out all the people who do know different countries. So there must have been a lot of people who say, well, this is the US, and then this is Canada, this is Mexico, and it's already, they don't include them. So it's also something that's intended to kind of mock people, which is a bad thing. I'm showing you this video kind of to learn from it, but not to mock these people. I think that there could have been, if they would have cared about geography, they would have remembered, they would have learned. So maybe it's not so much about teaching them the different countries. It's much more about teaching them, of letting them discover the importance of different cultures, of travel to enrich your life. So really, it's not about what experience we remember. They know they went to high school. They know they got taught this in primary education as well. It's about what we remember from the experience, what we get out of it. So yeah, there's a difference between learning something and retaining it, and there's a difference between going to school and getting something out of it that you're going to be, applying later on. So let me just. one of the things that's important, I talked about that we should design for emotion, not just cognition. I think when it comes to geography, it's probably just learn the countries, learn to point them out on a map. And if you don't know these countries, you haven't been there, or you know, have no intention of ever go there, you have no connection with it, you'll just forget it. But if there's some kind of emotional connection there, if you get intrigued by the stories of that country, I was just went to England on vacation, and you have a lot of it. I read a Sherlock Holmes book which took place in that area, and then it comes alive, you know, and then you have that emotional connection there. So designing for emotion isn't just about making things fun, it's really about making things connect with the learner on not just a cognitive level, but on an emotional level. And that's really important to make this stick. So one of the things that we know about experience and what we remember from it comes from the peak-end rule by Daniel Kahneman. And he kind of found out and researched that when you have an experience, any kind of experience, what we remember are the highs and lows emotionally, and we remember the end of the experience. And everything else, we may remember something, but it's much harder to remember. Now we can all imagine why this works, because you know, if something emotionally charged happens, something like you have like you achieve a high because you reach your goal or whatever, you know, then that's what sticks. But everything else, or in the negative sense also, everything else are there sound cutouts? I hope not. The other minor things are kind of forgotten. So the end is also easy to remember. That's where you wrap up that experience and you go to the next. So yeah, I remember how it ended. And some people who really understand this are artists. So when you go to a concert and oh, there are some audio problems, I understand. I hope not. I'll just continue talking and we'll see what happens. Maybe the recording will be better if you miss something. So I listened to members of the band Queen about how they set up a set list. And so the goal of the set list is really to take people on an emotional journey. That's right, that's Freddie. And so you start with a bang, and then you build it up to like different highs, and you take it down a notch, and you create like an intimate moment. You have audience participation, and then you end with a bang again. That's like the climax of the concert. You end with "We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions," and all the theater around it. And the goal is very simple. At the end of the concert, you want people screaming, "We want more." Now, this might sound a bit simplistic, but I think the same way, not just because I'm also a musician, but because as a learning experience designer, I want learners to say at the end of learning experience, "We want more." And I've designed, for example, e-learning on very boring topics and turned it into something where people said, when is the next one? When can I sign up for the next course? Instead of, glad this is over, not another one. So try to design with that in mind. All right, so when you look at those emotional highs and lows, those impact how we experience. But how we experience is in two phases. It's in the moment and it's afterwards. Now, in the moment, that's what we call the experiencing self. And the experiencing self goes through all the actual things that happen in the moment, how you feel. So when you learn to ride your bicycle, you struggle, you fall, you stand up again, you try again, you feel like you're succeeding, you fall again, your parents help you, get you, they get you back on your bicycle, and in the end, you're able to ride your bicycle, and you're really, proud of yourself. Now, that's the experience, the experiencing self. The narrating self is going to reflect on that experience and paint a very, let's say, personal picture of that experience, where they are going to forget quite a bit. They forget the pain of unless they fell really hard, but if it wasn't that terrible, they forget that it hurt, and they really just remember that it was hard but enjoyable to learn how to ride your bicycle. You remember the support of your parents, and you are really happy that you are expanding your world and you have gained a new skill. So that's the narrating self. And often we only think about the experiencing self in the sense that we design learning in specific steps, and we think about, so if they've done this, and this, then we're done. But the narrating self, if you ask people if they reflect on the experience, often there's a very personal, subjective interpretation on what they experience, and that's important to keep in mind as well. This also applies to how you can provide feedback effectively. If you end with negatives, you can say a lot of positive things at first, but if you end with "but," either this went really horrible, people will feel really awful. They will feel like they haven't done anything right. So try to give feedback with the negative kind of squeezed into the overall feedback, with ending on a positive note. It will offer a better experience for the learner. All right, so I'm going to skip this piece of music, because now you can show to me whether or not you are able to point out the country on the map. So we got Casey's going to help me out here, and she's going to open the poll, and you can enter your answer. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Where is Paraguay? So let's see. Let me put you on the spot, since we're just probably laughing about those people who didn't know any country. So now you can put it to the test yourself. We'll see the results in a moment when everyone has answered. And this is just a fun way to test you a little bit. Let's see when the answers are coming in. Always exciting. We got quite a few people here, so... And if you don't know, just guess. Don't try to look it up online. See if you know it by heart. The tension is a bit mounting. All right, so most people say 3. Second place is 4. There's some 1 and 2. So the correct answer is actually 3. So most of you had it right. If you didn't have this correct, no problem. Now you know. There's French Guinea, there's Colombia, and there's Uruguay. Those are the other countries. Okay, so I'm going to, because I want to leave about 10-15 minutes for questions at the end, let me give you an example of a learning experience. Now, we already talked about what is learning experience design, defined it. I explained to you why it's important, because as you saw, if people forget everything they learn, that's a problem, and you want to offer them an experience that sticks, something that connects with them also emotionally. So to do that, this is a process that I use, where you really focus on the question first. And often the question that clients have for me as a designer is not the real question they're trying to answer. You want to dig deeper into what's the underlying real question that we're trying to answer here. So once you know what are we aiming for, you do your research. And design research focuses on 2 things. It focuses on the learner and their goals. So you want to understand what the topic is about, or that you're dealing with, so you can define goals that relate to the learner and to the topic and to the broader goals of the learner as well. The learner, designing them is really important, because you need to understand who they are, and you need to be able to empathize with them. That's what makes all the difference. If you're able to figure out what works well for them specifically, they will be very thankful for it. So once you know more about the learner and their goals, you design. And design means ideation, turning those ideas into a concept design, visualizing, creating whatever, for creating a learner journey, maybe different ways to kind of shape those experiences. And then you want to build a prototype. Now I say prototype because you don't want to create the experience at once and then say, here it is, we're done. prototyping is important because when you're designing something new and different that hasn't been done before, you need to prove that it works. So that's why you test it. And when you tested your prototype, you go through the cycle again, you iterate until it's time to launch. Now, let me give you one example of a project I did, and then we'll get to the questions, which is an older project, but really still, I think it's a lot of fun. This project commemorated the fact that New York was founded 400 years ago, in the year we created this project. And it was founded as New Amsterdam, under Dutch flag by an English person, but with a lot of Dutch and European people there, founding New Amsterdam. And the project was kind of, the start of this was really the book written by American historian and author Russell Shortall, The Island at the Center of the World, which New York is kind of the center of the world, financially, culturally, maybe. So that small city that was New Amsterdam became New York. Now, so there is a shared past, a shared history between Dutch students and American students in New York. So what they wanted, what they asked of us was to create a learning experience where students in Amsterdam and students in New Amsterdam / New York would collaborate, would be working together, where we could bring history to life. We would make it come alive. And what we did is we created a trading game. Now, trade was really the whole reason the Dutch went there, and most people went there because, you know, there are resources there that you can't find in Europe. So, and vice versa. So the idea is to actually use physical places in the cities where students would go to do different things, like store goods or buy them or send them over. And so there would be these physical locations they would have to go to, which meant they would actually have to walk or run through the cities to get where they need to go. So it was location based. And this is what it looks like. And what's interesting here is that a couple of things. First of all, this does not look like a history lesson necessarily, but it is a history lesson. And it's really a way to make them experience some of the things that were happening in the past and discover what past they have, that they share with American and Dutch students. Now, what's also important here is that we had students from all kinds of levels, same age group, but different levels of schools, from more theoretical to more practical. And all of them were playing together, and all of them could win because there were different strategies available to them to win this game. And a lot more things besides just the trading happened. There were like the historical facts that were impacting the price of the different goods, like beaver fur went out of fashion in Paris, so price goes down. Then you should have sold earlier, or you know, you can run faster, you can be smarter, you can make better trades. All these ways, strategies are possible to win the game, and it worked out really well. So this is one example of a learning experience, but there are many, you know, can take endless shapes and forms. Now, before we get to the questions, I promise you a small gift. And we got our conference coming up, LXDCon 25, and you can visit lxdcon.com. And if you use the code LXD20, you get a 20% discount on your tickets. And to be clear, they are already not really expensive because it's a not-for-profit event. It's really aimed to bring people like you together around the theme of learning experience design and make it as accessible as possible by keeping the price low, because, you know, when you cater to a worldwide audience, you know, for what's cheap for some, it's expensive for others. So we want to make sure that we keep prices low. Anyway, that's LXDCon 25. Get your code LXD20 to ensure you get your 20% discount. And if you want to know anything else about learning experience design, besides asking questions right now, go to lxd.org for the Learning Experience Canvas, courses, articles, events, and so on. All right, there was a lot of talking in 15 minutes. So now it's time for questions.
We do have one question, and there's still time, folks. If you guys have questions, you can drop them in the Q&A bubble down at the bottom of your Zoom window. Brett asks, was the mention of peak end rule by Daniel Kahneman from Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow?
Yes, it was. That's the only question so far. All right. Um, I'm sure there must be more. Normally, it's more questions than I can handle, but maybe I was so clear in my story that everyone is completely satisfied.
That is highly possible as well. Maybe they just got all their questions answered throughout the presentation. Well, if that is the case, thank you so much, Niels. Actually,
Yeah, there's a question popping up right now. I see.
I see two questions. So let's start in the Q&A bubble. Sean said, do you have any advice about getting buy-in from SMEs about LXD?
That's a great point. So the example of the New York project that I just shown, there were different experts included involved in that project, and for me the key is first of all, well, try to do this in a gentle way, but explain to them that as important as they are as experts, the learner is always the most important person. So try to get them to empathize with the learner. And the best way to do that is to involve them in the design process. So I'm talking about the subject matter experts, especially if you do it with learners, because it's really, for me, often I come into these different topics where I have a beginner's mind. I don't know much about the topic. The expert knows everything about the topic. So if I'm able to understand what he's talking about, I can translate it to the learner. And so if the learner, if the expert says things that don't make sense to the learner and they see this happen in real life, then they understand I need to kind of adapt, my approach, or not try to cover everything, because experts always want more and more and more when it comes to content. So try to involve the expert in the design process. Have fun with them, because if you have a fun design process where you create cool stuff and they're like, wow, I'm part of this, they have fun with it and they are engaged and they are part of the solution and not part of the problem. So I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Several more popped into the Q&A chat. Let me see. Oh no, I dismissed one that I didn't want to. Any suggestions of how to make a training related to audit and tax more engaging? Any generic topics in tax, audit, and advisory?
So I don't believe there are boring topics. I created e-learning on preventing money laundering for financial institutions, which is quite boring. But when I first learned about it, but often you can find an angle where if you can create some kind of narrative where the topic is involved in a way where it makes it more interesting. So for example, when it comes to money laundering, we created kind of like a detective kind of like scenario where you have to discover whether or not a client could be trusted. And at the end, you really should know what red flags are when it comes to money laundering, and then say, well, yes, this client, we can work with him or not. So making it kind of actionable really works well. And this was about tax. Where was it?
Yeah, it's in the answered area now about how to audit, training related to audit and tax.
Well, I'm sure there are elements of that can be used for an interesting story, or maybe something playful, something that people can play with that makes it more interesting. Does it have to do with tax evasion? Does it have to do with when it comes to tax, you need to be really accurate. So maybe if you focus on some certain accuracy tasks where people are challenged to do something quicker, or to see kind of train certain skills that are good for that specific topic, but maybe also for a broader topic. So I hope that makes a bit of sense. Yeah.
We got another one from Ralph who asks, how do you get stakeholders, for example, business leaders, to be available to measure business outcomes after the learning event? Many
Yeah.
stakeholders often just want the training to be done.
I have the same experience, Ralph. The and But it is hard because first of all, it's really hard to measure. Some outcomes are really hard to measure. If you talk about we want to create a safer environment for employees, psychologically safer environment, for example. How do you measure it? You can take questionnaires and everything, but you really want to see what happens in the real world. I think a lot of times clients aren't really so much interested in measuring the outcome, also not so much interested in doing user tests, those kind of things. So really try to advocate for that and try to lead by example. So sometimes I've done user tests for free to really show that, well, we need to do this. Just look at the results. And they're like, oh, wait, yeah, we just saw people struggle. We need to make it better. So, yeah, when it comes to measuring it, if you have an example of a project where you've done this really well, it can get people on board, but you really need to prove to them that it's possible and it makes sense and where the value is, and try to spread out your budget maybe a bit more and spend less time on another thing, and so you can do a bit more on the measuring. And you talk about business outcomes, so I don't only design for business, also for universities, but outcome in general. If people care about the outcome they're aiming for, the clients, the experts, the learners, then they're also interested in seeing the effects. So get them excited about what you're designing for.
Becca asks, how have you gone about getting corporate leadership to buy into this format of teaching, as it typically can take more time to give the experience?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to take more time. I think the learning experience design is a less predictable process, a less predictable approach than, for example, instructional design, where it's really focused on, for example, efficiency, where you want to maybe take like existing exercises or formats and use them well, which is a great quality in itself. That's not my quality. I don't know many of those formats and exercises and stuff. I come up with new ones every time. But if you're able to come up with sometimes you can even save time. I've redesigned e-learning modules that were 90 minutes, took them to 45 minutes, and still get the same results. So it's really about designing smarter, and it's not just about the duration, it's also about the quality, of course. So if you show leadership that you can offer a better experience for the same budget, and that's going to even save them time, that's the best way to kind of convince them. I'm not saying it's easy, but it can be done.
We've got a question from another Niels who asks, how do we ensure when designing a learning experience, it will have both learning and experience? I often see a strong focus on experience, but less learning.
All right, so Niels, I assume you're from Scandinavia, and Scandinavia has quite a stronghold when it comes to experience design, and experience design is really about the experience, the quality of experience, and not necessarily about learning. So maybe that's where you see that happen, where it's just about making something memorable, but not really educational necessarily. Balancing that is really, when it comes to learning experience, you have to balance a lot of things, not just the experience and the educational aspects and the, let's say, the memorable aspects, but also the level of challenge that you offer, the level of engagement that you're looking for, how novel or how predictable it is, all of those things. So really, that's why you need to prototype your design, test it, and see if that's well balanced. And that's the only way that I can solve that problem.
Okay. Heather asks, what is your advice to instructional designers who have never designed a game before?
So game design is an important part of my work, not because all of the designs are complete games that I create. Sometimes they are. I create board games, digital games, mobile games. Um, but I almost always have at least something playful in them. So whether it's just a playful element, something gamified, or a complete game, it's really helpful to engage learners looking at what kind of level of gamification or game design would fit for them, would be right for them. I would do two things. I would just really look into game design as a discipline and study it. It is a field that can be studied. There is a book, let me put that in the chat as well, on ludodidactics. I hope I'm spelling it right, which is written by a friend of mine who is really about how can you use games and game elements for learning. And so look into that field. And the second thing is to start creating games. Anyone can create a game. It can be a very simple game, but if you start doing it, you will start to get a feel for it. It's not that scary. It's really difficult to design a really complete, refined design game, but it's not that hard to come up with a simple game, something you can just do on the spot with a couple of people. Like playing tag is a very simple game. Anyone can come up with that. So start small and start developing more of your design skills, and then get better over time.
Okay, we've got plenty more. And guys, I am prioritizing the questions in the Q&A section, but I'll try to catch all the ones in the chat too. Timing permitted. I know we're a little bit over, but all of this will be in the recording, even if you guys have to jump. So another question we got is how to sustain curiosity on the LX path.
How to sustain curiosity on the yeah, well, I'm a very curious person by nature. I am always interested in other people, their stories, and I think if you are my work is about people and creating something for them, and that process is for me is endlessly interesting. I think one of the challenges people might face is that they work for a certain company, for example, and they have to design similar experiences over and over again, for example. I talk to quite a few people who are very limited in their creative freedom, where it's certain things are just expected of them. So I think what always keeps it interesting is there are different topics, different people, and always different challenges. And if you dig into that, there's so much to learn and so much to discover. And the creative process will never, ever get boring, in my opinion. So get creative with it, even if it's in your spare time. Try stuff out, just like trying game design in your spare time. And that will keep the fire burning, I hope.
Nikita asks, how much should AI be leveraged in the learning design process? And what are the current trends?
All right, so that's a hot topic. And you say the learning design process. There is a difference between learning design, which is really a learning discipline, and learning experience design, which is really a design discipline, without getting into too much detail. But when you talk about the learning experience design process, AI, well, here's the thing. If your work revolves around creating, curating, arranging, and transferring content, then AI can do a lot of that for you. You can save a lot of time. But when you're designing learning experiences that are uniquely created for specific learners, there aren't really that many applications right now that I am using that benefit me. For example, if I want to create a visual design, I know exactly what I want. and I can create it as a designer. So having that created by AI might be pretty good, but will never be exactly what I need. Maybe in the future it will, but it can't really replace the creative process, the vision you have. So that's why I struggle to find a meaningful application with AI as a learning experience designer. If you want to get like a draft design for a course, for example, perfect. Just say, write me a course about specific topic, and you get like an outline, and you can tweak that. In my experience, when I use something like that, I get so much has to be adapted that I in the end start from scratch again. But maybe that's just me. But as a starting point to get the ball rolling, to get an outline, to get some ideas, to get some draft visuals, can be really helpful. Maybe not so much for me, but I'm sure many people will benefit from it.
We have another anonymous question here. How do you measure the effectiveness of a learning experience?
It all depends on the outcome you're aiming for and the type of experience you're offering. I just talked about psychological safety, for example. How do you measure that? Well, I'm sure well, in general, I like to talk to the people that have gone through the experience and see what they went through, what stuck with them, what worked well, what didn't. So that type of feedback is really important for me to know whether or not the experience worked well. But when it comes to knowing if they reach specific objectives, some objectives are easy. If they have to be able to calculate certain numbers, for example, then make certain calculations. Well, create a test for that, have them make calculations, and see whether or not they succeed. Other things are harder. So the not so satisfying answer is that everything depends on the type of experience you design, the outcome you're aiming for, and which elements of that outcome and those objectives you're working with are measurable first of all, and then you need to design something to measure them. Often I like to kind of measure or assess throughout the experience, just keep track of what people are doing, and not just do like a test at the end.
Okay, we have a weird question. What can be considered an adequate sample size for testing before launching a teacher training? And then additionally, and what are some good strategies for evaluation of the prototype? As in for some training, the behavioral change might take a huge amount of time.
That's right. You can't test everything when it comes to behavioral change, for example. So yeah, that's where you kind of need to test in the long run, see what happens over time. But an adequate sample size often is defined by reality, how many people are at your disposal. And I am very happy if I'm able to talk to or involve, let's say, 4 or 5 people from the specific group of learners that I'm designing for. And I think you can learn a lot from that. But you also have to understand that these people, while they represent this group, they don't represent everyone necessarily. So it's really a great starting point. So, but sometimes there's 1 or 2 people available. But I would say if you're able to have about 5, 6 people there, that would be a great way to get started.
Awesome. Okay. Linda asks, how can you create an unforgettable experience in a learning experience about system training?
So actually, Linda, we would have to sit down and design that together probably. But you really have to think about, so what would make there are things that make experiences unforgettable in general, like a certain emotional connection to what someone experiences, like a profound deep conversation with another person can make something really memorable. So creating that, designing for social interaction, designing for emotion, can already make something much easier to remember and less forgettable. When it comes to system training, it's also about who is going to be learning about system training. Are these students for, let's say, 18, 19, 20 years old? Are these professionals? Those would require different approaches. And so, yeah, there's no, if I say, well, create a game or do, that would just be some guessing, and guessing is dangerous. You always have to be careful with assumption and guesses. You really have to look at your audience and think about how does system thinking relate to them. Can I think of examples? For example, when you talk about cybersecurity, for example, designing about cybersecurity for a company can sound a bit boring, but it also relates to people in their private lives. You know, are they being hacked? Are they? Is there like they can get messages from like you have the scammers, for example. So there, I always try to look for what are all the different angles that make this topic interesting to the learner as a professional, maybe as a student, maybe as a just as a private individual, and try to get those different angles in.
Okay, and Sophia asks, does it take longer to design learning experience than to apply traditional ADDIE approach? And how do you sell it?
All right. I have never used ADDIE because I have no instructional design background, but I do know the process. I've talked to people about it. And I think in both cases, if you are a good instructional designer and you got ADDIE in your really ingrained in your approach, you'll be quick with it. The same applies to the process that I use, the iterative design process. I can do that really quickly because I'm experienced with it. I think when you transition to that, it will take more time. If the results are better, or that also depends on the situation, because I'm not saying that instructional design or learning experience design, one of them is better than the other. There are different approaches to solve similar problems with different results, basically. So if you have a client, for example, who says, well, I want to do something really out of the ordinary, that's probably when you should try something like learning experience design. And going through that iterative process will take a bit more time as you get used to it. But if the outcome is more suitable for that specific client and those learners, then it's probably worth it. But then you have to, how do you sell it? Well, I sell it by showing people what's possible by other things that I've already designed. If you don't have that advantage, then you should talk about the possibilities of why it's so important that a learning experience goes beyond maybe something that people are already used to. If you really want to make it something special, something that will stay with them for a longer time. So try to look at those benefits. And if you also involve that a client or other people in that creative process, they will probably enjoy it and they will say, well, this is an interesting process in itself. The outcome is looking really good. That's how you sell it.
Wonderful. Niels, do you have time to answer a few of these questions in the chat section? I'm digging through and trying to find a few.
Yeah.
I see one from Nikki Ann. She says, I work in pharma something. It's patient safety. I couldn't pronounce the word. She said, for a manufacturer as a trainer. She said, a common issue I have is engagement because the ways to engage are sometimes viewed as not meeting the need because it doesn't literally have it verbatim in it that worded that way. So it's very literal and technical. Additionally, we have a broad audience from third-party suppliers with no education or experience to doctors and more. Engagement is hard regardless. Any recommendations?
What I would look into is that you talk about the broad audience. So you want to start looking at what do these different audiences have in common and what makes them different, and maybe come up with like 3 subgroups where you see, okay, these are quite different groups when it comes to the audience I'm designing for. I can totally imagine how you would either design different solutions for different groups, but also you can say, well, within the experience we have different options, and depending on what people prefer, they can choose different options. And you know that, so let me give you an example. When we design something to help students with reading, who have difficulties reading in primary education, we looked at the differences between the reasons that boys generally read books and the reasons that girls generally read books. Now, I say generally because it's never that black and white, but by understanding the motivation to read books for boys and girls in general, we would simply offer different options without saying, if you're a girl, do this, if you're a boy, do this. They would have those options available, and whatever you would prefer, you would do that, and it would improve the experience. So try to create something that works for a smaller audience, maybe to make it more engaging. If people and engagement, adding, let's say, game elements shouldn't be distracting. It should be improving the experience. So I would say there's a lot of if you create whatever simple prototype and test it with people, that would be the best way to kind of try different strategies and see what happens really early on. It can be a simple paper prototype, doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just involve them, talk to them. What matters to you? What do you enjoy about this? And then you will find something that will get them more engaged, I'm quite certain.
One more question, guys. We're going to wrap up on this one. This is another one from Nikki Ann, which addresses something that you did touch on, Niels, but she asks it in a bit of a different way, kind of expounds on it. She said, what's the best way to assess learning after a training? What truly shows the concept was understood and will be applied properly?
So when you say understood, it relates to knowledge, and applied, it relates to skill. I also like to look at people's views, the insights they've gained, and their behavior, of course, which, when you put it all together, kind of defines who we are and how we experience. But it does. Some things can't be measured, not in a let's say quantifiable way, where like you score 7 points on like I said, psychological safety, for example. And I think a great way for people to you need to keep track of what they are doing over a longer period. So if they can create some kind of small journal where they reflect on what they've experienced, but also reflect on whether or not they are able to apply it, or what kind of challenges they face, then over time things will pop up. And often the problem with training is it's like short, it ends, it's a day, it's a week, it's a certain period, and then it ends. What happens afterwards? Designing a learning experience also means thinking about what happens after that training. So designing certain maybe smaller activities or tools or ways of engaging people after the training will also be a great way, not just to keep the learning going, but also to assess them over a longer period. So try to think in the longer term and extend the experience beyond the point where, thank you, that was training for today, and that's it.
Awesome. I think that's everything. We had
Wow.
a very lively Q&A period, extended Q&A section. So this was really great. Niels, thank you so much for your expertise in that beautiful, I mean, visually stunning presentation.
Thank you.
Thank everyone in our audience, our attendees, for that lively discussion. Lots of knowledge sharing in the chat happening too. Just a really good group.